New router with real-time video thumbnails. View your router sources on a built-in LCD. Plus, create your own router size. You decide the number of video inputs and outputs. The new Avenue router from Ensemble Designs.
Hi, I'm Michael Grotticelli with Broadcast Engineering Magazine and Broadcast Engineering Online. Here today with Dennis Wharton, Executive Vice President of Communications for the NAB. Hi, Dennis.
Hi, Michael. How are you?
We're here at NAB 2011, and so far I think it's been a great show.
It's been a fantastic show. We're hearing just nothing but positive feedback from our exhibitors, our attendees. We have 92,000, almost 93,000 attendees, 1,500 exhibiting companies. A third of those are from outside the United States, as are a third of the attendees from outside the United States, which really demonstrates that the global brand and reach of the NAB show. It's been a fantastic show. It's
certainly been a really exciting show this year. And I'm wondering, with 1,500 exhibitors at the show, what kind of business is generated within the 4 days?
Well, a lot.
We've
documented that $20 to $30 billion in sales is generated as a result of this show. So that's why the exhibitors keep coming back year in and year out. They know that if you want to be serious in the communications marketplace, you have to be at the NAB show. And the reason they come back is because they sell a lot of product.
Of course, now that all the good stuff out of the way, there's a lot of issues going on in the industry that really are on the minds of broadcasters. And one of them is, of course, this whole idea of the broadband plan being proposed by the government.
Right.
And of course, they want spectrum from broadcasters.
Sure.
So I have two questions. One, what's the latest stance on the NAB as far as that? And if a broadcaster decides not to opt into the system, is he going to get taxed in some way?
Well, that's a real question and a real concern of ours. Our issue is not that if there's a station that wants to volunteer to give back spectrum, we're fine with that so long as the non-volunteers are held harmless, and we don't want them to be taxed.
Right.
We don't want them to be penalized in some way that could really hurt their viewers. I mean, the issue here is we have 43 million Americans who rely exclusively on over-the-air television. If the FCC does this in a rushed way, we could really do damage to those viewers who are relying on broadcasting for niche foreign language services, religious programming,
Right.
free entertainment, news, sports, weather alerts. Don't forget the public safety aspect of free and local broadcasting. So we want to be helpful. We want to work with the administration. We're not Luddites. We get that we need new technology,
Right.
but let's not damage an enduring American institution, which is free and local television.
Right. Now, the government is talking about things like repacking spectrum and whatnot, but would you agree that there are parts of the country that would work and other parts where it wouldn't work?
Well, you make a good point, because we really would question this notion of a nationwide spectrum crisis. If there is any capacity issues, it's in the largest markets. There's certainly no capacity crisis in Kentucky or Wichita. I mean, so why would you punish TV viewers in those markets just so someone can get a faster download application in Manhattan?
Right, right. Do we have any idea of the time frame of things like these auctions, if they did happen, when they would happen?
We don't, and we don't know very many specifics about the proposal that the FCC is putting forward.
Right.
We think there ought to be an inventory of spectrum right now that's in use that might not be deployed. We know that broadcasters gave back more than a quarter of our spectrum less than 2 years ago, and we know that that spectrum has not been fully deployed.
Right.
We know that companies like Dish Network have told analysts, yeah, we're sitting on spectrum, we think it's a good speculation play. Well,
Right.
you shouldn't have spectrum be speculation ploys just so you can maybe hedge against inflation. So the notion that we should be jeopardizing free and local television in light of the claims of some of these wireless carriers that they're sitting on spectrum and have not yet deployed it is really kind of troubling to us. So we want to work with the government, but the timing is really unclear, and this AT&T T-Mobile proposed merger
Right.
really sucks a lot of oxygen out of the room in terms of timing in Congress, because you're going to have Congress pass legislation if you're going to have these spectrum auctions, and I think there's going to be a lot of attention paid to that issue before we turn our attention to broadcast spectrum issues.
Great, thank you. Another subject that's kind of important right now is retransmission, and we see a lot of disputes going on around the country between broadcasters and providers.
Right.
In general, the consumer seems to blame the local broadcasters or the networks, when in essence, really, it's not the network's fault in a lot of cases. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I would question whether there are a lot of these going on, because in reality, 99.9% of these deals get done out of the public eye. They get privately negotiated, which is the way they're supposed to operate. What you have here is a couple of companies manufacturing this alleged crisis in retransmission consent, and I think the fact that they were hoping that government would get involved in this maybe didn't bring them to the table as quickly as possible. The good news is that the FCC just a couple of weeks ago acknowledged that they really have no authority to change these retransmission consent rules because they're written into statute. I think that might provide a benefit to getting the other side to actually stop sort of playing games and have serious negotiations with the broadcaster. You haven't seen a retransmission consent disruption in service since the FCC rules came out saying that they really have no authority to change the rules. But you're right, broadcasters sometimes get blamed, but the reality is, why shouldn't we get fairly compensated for the highest rated and most watched programming? It's really expensive to have the rights to the Super Bowl or to produce a program like Glee or Modern Family or 60 Minutes. And broadcasters get a pittance. Many broadcasters, local broadcasters and their network affiliates or network stations get a pittance compared to what some of these cable networks receive, who are often just rerunning old broadcast programming. Broadcast programs.
Sure. Another issue that we see is there's lots of competition going on now for stations, for things like, we call cable cutting, cord cutting things, like Netflix, or Apple TV, whatnot. I'm just wondering, for the local station, should they be worried?
I don't think so. I think in reality the cord cutting phenomenon, which is really sweeping the nation with a lot of younger people, is actually helpful to broadcasters, because you're seeing a combination of broadcast TV, live and local, for news, for the highest rated sports, for entertainment programming, and they're supplementing that viewing with Hulu, Netflix, where they tape programs on their DVRs and watch it a day later. So the real the companies that really ought to be concerned about cord cutting are the pay TV operators, who are going to be losing the $100 a month subscription fees that they normally get.
Right. Great. Another subject that I really wanted to talk to you about today was, the idea of watching TV over the air. It's free. The signal is better than anything you get on any provider.
Say it, brother.
Yeah. And yet the NAB doesn't seem to promote it as well as I believe, strongly I should say, as well as I think they should.
Yeah.
And when I say that, I mean not just as maybe a spot on a TV station, but actually putting together some kind of a national network of installers, whatnot. Why hasn't that happened?
Well, I think we have promoted antenna TV. We work actually with the CEA. Sometimes we don't agree with CEA, but we have an antenna site called www.antenna.org, which helps. If you log in, it helps you identify what antenna to buy and how to install it, and whether it can be an indoor or outdoor antenna. The fact is that antenna sales are going through the roof, which demonstrates to us that
no pun intended.
Sure, exactly. The claim of some of our critics is that broadcast TV is somehow dying. The reality is that broadcast TV is actually growing because of this cutting the cable cord phenomenon. So our audiences are 14% plus of pure over-the-air viewers. That number is growing. You have companies like Antennas Direct, a St. Louis company, where they're nailing down agreements with Best Buy, with Walmart, with Sam's Club, and their sales, they can't build antennas fast enough to accommodate the people who are buying them. So I would argue that NAB and some of our partners in the manufacturing business have done a pretty good job on promoting antenna sales, and I think we'll be doing more.
But I just think the sales part I totally agree with, but it's the implementation part. The reason I believe that cable is so successful is that they come to your house and they put it together.
That's true.
We need someone to come to my house and get up on the roof because I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Is there any way the NAB can get involved in that somehow?
We've talked about that, Mike, over time, and I think it's something that we should maybe consider again.
Because I think it would make it easy for people, and I think more people would choose that option.
Well, this is not your father's television antenna. They're sleek, they're cool looking, and often it's they're small, and I think it's something that ought to be considered actually.
Great. So in general, with all the competition, as we mentioned before, things like Netflix and Amazon now is getting involved and whatnot, what's the future of a local station going to look like?
I think it's very bright. We've cycled out of probably the worst advertising recession in the history of television, and
things are getting better, aren't they?
They're getting much better. I mean, a lot of it's car manufacturing or car advertising. Political has helped, but retail is up in most markets as well. And so I think the picture is bright for broadcasting. We have a mobile DTV play that I think is going to help us, where you get your live and local programming on cell phones, laptops, in the back seats of cars. So I think that multicasting is exploding across the country, where we're able to use the digital spectrum, which I think is going to reinvent the broadcasting business. We've spent $15 billion, and we made this transition from analog to digital television. You can send multiple program streams simultaneously to serve perhaps underserved audiences, and supplement that with the full high definition picture, which is far superior on over-the-air television than it is on cable. We're not shooting a lot of stuff down the pipe to degrade the signal. Exactly. And I think the future is very bright for local TV broadcasting.
Great. Thank you, Dennis.
Great. Thank you, Mike.